Tonight, someone you love is going to die. Not literally, not today, but somewhere in your mind, that thought just flickered and you flinched. You pushed it away. That flinch is older than language. That flinch is older than fire. For most of human history, death was not hidden behind hospital curtains. It happened in the open, in the cave, on the ground where you slept. And what your ancestors did next would shape almost every ritual, every superstition, every quiet moment of grief you still carry today. You think mourning is just sadness. It is not. It is a behavior, and that behavior has a history stretching back over 100,000 years. Let's go back, not to a funeral home, to a cave in what is now Israel called Kafse. Around 100,000 years ago, someone dug a hole, not for shelter, not for food storage, for a body. A child laid carefully on its side, legs bent, arms folded close to the chest. Beside the child's hands, someone had placed the antlers of a deer. Think about that for a second. Someone chose those antlers. Someone carried them from somewhere else, maybe from a hunt, maybe from a place that mattered. And someone decided that this child, this specific small body, deserved to be sent into the ground holding them. That is not an accident. That is intention. That is the first fingerprint of grief we can still touch. Archaeologist Erella Hovers, who studied the Kafse burials extensively, has argued that deliberate placement of objects with a body signals something profound. It signals belief, not necessarily belief in an afterlife exactly as you might picture it, but belief that this body still mattered, that it was not just meat to be left for scavengers. It was still, somehow, a person. Why would that matter to a species just trying to survive? Here is the strange part. Grief is expensive. Burying a body takes time. Digging takes energy. Energy that could go toward finding food, or resting, or running from predators. In a brutal, competitive Ice Age landscape, spending hours digging a hole for someone who can no longer hunt, no longer gather, no longer reproduce, makes no obvious survival sense. And yet, they did it anyway. This is where things get interesting, because grief, it turns out, was never really about the dead. It was about the living. Anthropologist Paul Pettitt, who has spent decades studying Paleolithic burial practices across Europe, suggests that these early burials were social technology, a way of processing loss so the group did not fall apart. When someone dies suddenly, a group can panic. Trust can break down. Fear can spread. A ritual, even a simple one, gives people something to do with their hands and their eyes while their mind catches up to the loss. You still do this. When someone you love dies, you do not go numb and disappear. You plan things. You choose flowers. You choose music. You choose words to read out loud, even though the person cannot hear them anymore. You are doing, in a quieter, more polished way, exactly what that person at Kafse did with a set of deer antlers. But burial was not the only response. Some ancient humans did something you might find upsetting. At sites belonging to Homo antecessor in Spain, and later among some Neanderthal populations, archaeologists have found cut marks on human bones that match the marks left on animal bones after butchering for meat. This has led some researchers to propose a practice sometimes called mortuary cannibalism. Before you recoil, understand what this likely was not. It was probably not driven by hunger in most cases. It was, in several interpreted instances, a way of keeping someone close, literally incorporating them into your own body. In some documented traditional cultures studied by later anthropologists, similar practices were understood as an act of love, not violence. A refusal to let a person become nothing. Strange to your modern ears? Maybe, but you already do a version of this too. You keep a parent's wedding ring on your own finger. You wear a grandmother's scarf. You carry someone's photo in your wallet, pressed against your body all day. You are still trying to keep them close. The method has changed. The impulse has not. Now here is the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. Neanderthals, a separate human species that lived alongside and eventually beside our own ancestors, also buried their dead. At Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, a Neanderthal skeleton was found surrounded by soil containing unusually high concentrations of pollen. For decades, this was interpreted as evidence of flowers placed deliberately at burial, giving rise to the nickname flower burial. More recent research led by archaeologist Chris Hunt has complicated this picture, suggesting some of that pollen may have entered the site through natural means like burrowing animals or wind. The debate is still active, but even setting the flowers aside, the burial itself, the deliberate positioning of the body in a protected part of the cave, remains striking. Why does this matter? Because it means grief, real, structured, intentional grief, may not be uniquely human. It may be something deeper, something that emerges wherever a species becomes social enough, bonded enough, aware enough of loss. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If a different species of human, one that no longer exists, once knelt beside a body and could not simply walk away, what does that tell you about your own inability to just walk away? Grief, it turns out, might not be a flaw in your programming. It might be the proof that the programming worked, that you bonded, that you attached, that another person became part of how your brain understood the world, so deeply that their absence leaves a hole your mind keeps checking again and again, like a tongue returning to a missing tooth. Psychologist John Bowlby, known for developing attachment theory, argued that grief is simply attachment behavior with nowhere left to go. Your brain built an entire internal model of a person you loved. It expected to find them in certain places, at certain times, saying certain things. When they die, that model does not immediately disappear. It malfunctions. You reach for your phone to text them. You set 2 coffee cups down out of habit. For a fraction of a second, your ancient hunter-gatherer brain still expects them to walk through the door. That is not weakness. That is 100,000 years of evolutionary architecture refusing to update itself overnight. And here is where the modern mirror becomes almost too clear to ignore. You still bury people with objects, a wedding ring, a favorite book, a handwritten letter tucked into a coffin. You still gather in groups when someone dies because being alone with grief feels unbearable, and your ancestors' brains knew that isolation after loss was dangerous. You still create rituals, funerals, wakes, memorial posts online, because ritual gives your nervous system something to hold on to while your identity rearranges itself around a person-shaped absence. Even the parts of grief that feel most personal to you, the sudden tears in a grocery store, the anger that makes no sense, the strange guilt for laughing too soon, all of it echoes behavior first performed in caves lit only by firelight, tens of thousands of years before anyone wrote a single word down. So when you place flowers on a grave, you are not inventing a gesture. You are repeating one. When you keep a photograph close, you are doing what someone did with deer antlers in a cave in Kafse. When you cannot bring yourself to delete a voicemail from someone who is gone, you are simply the latest link in a very old chain of humans who refused to let love disappear the moment breathing stopped. Tonight, someone you love is going to die. Someday. Not today. But when it happens, you will not need instructions. Your body already knows what to do. It has known for 100,000 years. Subscribe to know more of this Brains Way.